All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Clark from Personality Pitching. I'm here with Kiyoka Jenkins of Coco Mother Coaching, the amazing Coco. And we're going to dive into a topic that I'm becoming almost, I feel like an expert in when it comes to caregiving because of the spaces and places that I'm in. So, first of all, let me just welcome you to the podcast. Welcome, Kiyoka.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. So excited to talk about caregiving and self care and all the things in between.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna jump right in. I'd love to know what pulled you into caregiving and caregiving coaching.
Yeah, so my story is that I didn't have much of a choice. My first loved one that I cared for, along with my family, was my mother. And that was way back in 2005. My mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer to our surprise. I mean, complete surprise. And so back then, we lived in Florida, and my sister and I, just her only two daughters, were fresh in our marriage and had young children and working full-time jobs. And life was not easy for us trying to figure it all out. And then our mother, the strongest woman we know, gets diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a very painful cancer, very quick spreading cancer. And so she was diagnosed in June of 2005, and she died, Michael, in December of 2005. Talk about knocking the wind out of you. And so, what do? Well, my sister and I rolled our sleeves up and we jumped in, kids, husbands, and all the battles in between, and did the very best we could. And in doing that, we did a lot of things wrong. And so from that day to now, my family and I have caregiven for six more family members. And each time we learn something new and we get better at it and we learn how to juggle it all. And so it has grown into a passion of mine. As the oldest daughter, I've always had responsibility and took it seriously and with pride. Over time, it became who I am and what I do best.
Awesome, awesome. Wow. And that was, I mean, obviously when people have to deal with this, they can react so many different ways, but it sounds like you really hunkered down, answered the call. Um, I'd like to know when it comes to caregiving, I want to jump into this because there's going to be a lot of people that are either have caregivers or are actual caregivers. I'd like to know what do most people get completely wrong about what caregiving or a caregiver actually does?
Well, top three things. One is that you think you can do it all yourself. And that's not always conscious, it's subconscious. So you don't think you can do it all yourself, but you wind up doing it all yourself, right? Because subconsciously, I'll do it. I'll just do it. I don't want to bother this person. I'll do it. Okay, that's one. Two, you think that you don't need time to rest. You think you can rest when they rest. You think you can rest when they get better. You think you can, and you need to rest along the way. And then three, you think that you know what's best for the person you're caregiving for because the doctor said, or that one said, or I used to have. And so if it worked for me, or if the doctor said it should work for you. And that's just not always the case. So those three top things I'll repeat. One is that you don't think you need to help. You do. Two, you neglect your self care. And then three, you think you know what the person you're caregiving for needs. You think you know all their needs because usually they're your family members, right? Your mother, your sister, your aunt, your brother. I know exactly what mom needs or dad needs, and we don't.
And just a quick technical side note, you're connected to your Wi-Fi?
I am.
Okay, perfect. Excellent. All right, so when it comes to that, I'll give you kind of a part 2 to that question. So you said you think you know what your patient needs. How do you find out? I mean, because I know immediately I'm saying, so, well, why don't you just ask? So I'd love, I guess it's a two-parter. Like, Why don't people just ask, and what's the best way to know what your patient needs or who you're caring for needs?
You said it. You just ask. You just ask the question and wait for the answer. That doesn't always form in words, but it also is in action. It is very much an observational answer, because sometimes the person you're caregiving for, 'cause there's two sides to this, right? It's the caregiver and then the person you're caregiving for. They're often writing two different books. Here's the thing, hashtag two different books. They're often writing two different books in the same office, right? In the same space, but it's two different books. So you have to ask to enter into their world. And when you ask specific questions. Nothing is off limits. Nothing is off limits if you want to do the best job you can for the person you're caregiving for. So, how do you feel today? Today,
Mhm.
this minute, because it changes often, quickly. And so then you ask, develop a scale. And when you go to the doctor, they say, what's your pain level from 1 to 5 or one
Yeah.
to 10? Same concept. How are you feeling today from 1 to 5? 1 to 10. What's hurting exactly? What type of pain is it? What do you think you want to do about it? Here's what I don't know. I just feel so bad. Well, here's some things you could. The doctor has prescribed this. We can go for a walk. We can do some arts and crafts. We can do some light exercise. We can bake a cake. Different things, because not everything is medicine driven. I
Hmm.
realize that not everything is medicine driven, and not everything is drawn out of the twigs and berries off a tree either. Sometimes it's just mental, doing something different, being in a different space, receiving a phone call from a loved one or a friend.
Okay. Now, I want to take a little bit of a left here. We're probably going to have people watching or listening, and their caregiver is someone in their family. And we know family dynamics can be all over the place, stressed, strained, have past, unforgiveness, a lot of stuff that happens. And then you throw them in the midst of caregiving. How do you, what do you suggest in the midst of the asking questions and process when you're dealing with possibly a strained or stressed relationship? Because sometimes what I've heard is, well, especially when it comes to MS, and I want to go into that as a topic. Sometimes symptoms are silent, so it's like patient may be feeling pain. It's like, well, you don't look like you're in pain, and a caregiver, professional caregiver, would know that symptoms can be silent. Where a family member may look at you like, you don't look like you're in pain. You don't look like you're tired. What do you suggest in those situations?
Well, one, I would say most of us don't look like what we're going through,
Mhm.
especially people of color. We're used to the trauma and the struggle and the difficulties of life. We're just used to it. And so we pummel through that like a pro. And so does our loved ones. They too don't want to look lesser than or weaker than. And then when you throw in those roles, rather, if they're a man or a woman, right, you have to be more macho, or if they're head of household or not, or if they're a mom with children and they're just used to being the protector, right? So you throw in all of those dynamics, of course, a lot of us won't look like what we're going through because we're still performing for the people we love, which includes our caregiver. Okay? So, newsflash, just because they say they're not in pain doesn't mean they're not in pain. Pain comes in many forms, not just physical. It's mental, it's emotional. Um, it is just something you cannot get away from when you're dealing with a chronic illness, cancer, MS, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. The list goes on. Those are just a few. It's pain is something you just don't get away with. It becomes part of your life. The question becomes is how much pain are you in? and how much can we control that, right? So here's what pain may look like without words. Sitting in one spot all day, not saying much, just not saying a word. Um, People or friends or children are running around and their eyes aren't lighting up. They're not following the room. They're not, they're in their own zone. They're completely zoned out. They're frowning. You've got some grimace lines in their face. Their mouth is twisted. Just, they're, here's a slight one. They're just shaking their head. My God, is what they're thinking. Lord, if I could just get up, if I could just go to the bathroom without asking somebody, you know. Sometimes people shake their legs, you know, they're shaking their legs or they're tapping their foot.
Okay.
These are just some things of what pain looks like without words, nonverbal pain.
Wow. Thank you for that. So I want to talk about MS. Again, I'm taking another left turn here. I want to talk about MS and caregiving. I know a lot of this is actually going to be going out to a couple of MS organizations, and I know they want to get some insight. MS, as we know, is unpredictable. They have good days, bad days. There's progression. How do you help a caregiver plan for something like MS that just keeps changing?
Mm. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, you know, I would start out with doing an observation, right? A consult, if you will, right? What's the family dynamics? What is the level of the MS? What is the person with MS? What are their most top five? Let's call their top five um, pain points, okay? Anger points. Those are two different things. Excuse me. Because when you have a chronic illness, it makes you angry. So
Mm,
what are those anger points? What are those pain points, right? So I would consult and do a complete observation because each care plan is going to be different for each family member. Okay, so that's the one thing I would do, and then would work on those things. What is in our control, right? Can we say, like, can we just put up a sign every day that says I'm on a 5? Because sometimes you just don't want to talk about it. Put that 5 on the refrigerator. So now everyone in the household knows, okay, mom, dad, cousin, uncle, grandpa is on a 5. And when he's on a 5, what works best for him is give him some space, make sure that he's warm, make sure he has his favorite snack, whatever it is. Okay. Maybe a call to, because listen, we all need some counseling and some therapy. So maybe we need a call to the therapist. You know, these are things that just little small things that makes it all better for you, the caregiver, and the person you're caring for.
that's good. That's good. And I've seen that a lot of MS caregivers are spouses or partners. How does caregiving change when you have that relationship dynamic? And what
It,
do you tell couples?
it changes everything. It changes everything. It's just like having a baby. It changes everything. And when you have a baby, oftentimes you're all excited about it. You know, you just, yay, the baby's here. And you get it as prepared as possible. You tell everybody, you have a baby shower, you buy all the gifts ahead of time as possible. Oftentimes people don't do that with chronic illnesses. Read all about it. Prepare yourselves ahead of time. Know that things are going to be different. So you're not frustrated or as frustrated when these things start to happen because they will. They will. People become grumpy when they're in pain. When you're in MS, you don't understand what's going on. You go from being a full functioning adult child or whatever your role is to completely like it feels like in less than 24 hours you just nosedive into someone that needs all this care and attention, and that is not comfortable, especially for men with MS. They want to be this savior. They want to be the man of the house. And then now they have to depend on their wives and children and other family members. It makes them angry. It makes them angry. So find out what they can do. Figure that out together. If it's just unloading a dishwasher or making sure that they keep the grocery list up to date. I mean, just find whatever it is, as small as large as possible, and let them own it and celebrate that and appreciate that.
That's good. How do you keep in that dynamic all of a sudden where maybe, and it could be a wife to husband, husband to wife, where all of a sudden they're almost sheltering them and saying, oh, what they can't do, what they can't do. Because I like what you said, you focus in on what they can do, right? But what if you have the opposite? You come in, you meet with a couple, and it's the opposite. The wife is like sheltering the husband and not allowing them to stretch or try, or even vice versa. The husband is sheltering the wife. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a good one. Because sometimes you have to do a little reverse psychology because they come right in, right off the gate. Oh, and you do this with children as well, which is why it frustrates people because you say, oh no, he or she can't do this, that, or that. And you know what? You say, oh, thank you for letting me know. Let me write that down. This, that, and that. Got it. Thank you. Now, what can they do? Silence. Well, let me ask Johnny. Johnny, tell me, what can you do? I can do such, and that. Okay. So it looks like, right? You've got it written down. You said, looks like Johnny can do this. You said he couldn't, but he said he can do this. So he can do all of these things. Let's try it right now. Let's do it. Johnny, show me how you put your shoes on. That looks great. What do you think, wife? Oh, but it's not tied properly. It looks perfect to me. It looks great to me. Right? So we have to, it's a little reverse psychology. Let them,
Okay.
because you have to, I love this. Mel Robbins has a book called Let Them. You have to let them get it out. You
Mm.
cannot interrupt that train of thought that they are determined to get to their train stop. Let them get there. Let them get there. Now that we're here, let's talk about our return trip. Now let's talk about the Johnny. Johnny, tell me what you can do as we get
Mm.
back on that train and travel back the same way you came. We can do this. And
Now,
now we have a round trip of what. So now, because Johnny may have never had the opportunity to express himself in this way, now we have a new light that we can discuss.
okay, good. And I do, and I don't know if we can answer it here or there needs to be a part two. But to your point, I've seen situations where we see Johnny do something, it works, it goes. How do you keep that balance or empower that other spouse to keep them motivated to push Johnny to do that thing when you're gone? Because it could be amazing when you're there,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they have this, but what are you saying to the other partner or spouse that's all of a sudden saying, "Oh shoot, I didn't know. Well, I guess I didn't know." How do you empower that spouse so they don't all of a sudden feel like, "Oh, I guess you don't need me," type of thing?
Right. 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 Oh, that's good. That's really good. So, a couple of things. One is you speak to that spouse separately, right? So after
Mhm.
we've seen Johnny and we've done this collectively as a group, it's a group session, right? Now we're dividing and conquering. So now we're going to take the wife aside and say, listen, here's what your husband is trying to do. It is your duty as a wife to allow him to rise to the occasion. If you don't do that, you block your blessings and his, which then affects the marriage. Tell me what you want. You want a better life? You want a better marriage? Then it must be done differently. Because if you do not, this will only get worse. So I'm going to need you to work. We're a team, right? I need you to work with me on this to build back up Johnny's confidence and abilities in a way that you stay out of it.
Mm, wow. Now, I love the way you're saying that because that also goes back into your role as a coach, because for you to say that, that sound like, even with me, you weren't saying it to me, it sounded tough. Like, oh, okay. So you're able to so
Yeah.
clearly there's a need for this third person, this third party to come into a situation and say, "Hey, you need to stay out of it. You need to." And so that, I'm sure that's part of your role, right? To
Yeah.
be that
Listen,
not only have information, but also kind of to be that tough one, right? The tough
you
cop.
have I have to Ayana fix their life sometimes. Sometimes you just have to really give it to them. Is this what you want? Because if it is, you're going about it the wrong way. Just that simple. It is just that simple. And so, and then you're not going to always like it, right? But you will think about it. You will think about it. Listen, there's a saying that says, even if you're not clapping, you're watching, right? And
Okay.
so, even if you're not clapping, you're watching. So, you're taking it in. You're taking it in, and you're going to do these back and say, you know what? I was right. Or you won't say nothing and you'll let Johnny just become all that he can be.
Good, good. Can you repeat that? I think there was a
I'm
little
sorry.
interruption
Yeah.
there.
So I was saying that there's a saying about either if even if you're not clapping, you're watching, which means
Okay.
that you're taking in the information. You're still taking it in, you're pondering it, you're chewing on it, you're seeing that it's working. And so even if you don't come back to me and say, you know what, you were right, I'm going to do it this way, you'll stay out of the way because you know it works. And if you have love for the people that you're caring for, you will stay out of the way and let it work.
Good, good. I stay out of the way and let it work. Nice.
Stay out of the way and let it
Well,
work. Let it
let
work.
me ask you this. I whenever you hear the word burnout, people think of a couple things. They think of corporate burnout. They think burnout as, I hear it a lot of times. I hear moms say, "Oh my gosh, I'm burnt out," and not to say it's a female thing. I'm just saying. But when it comes to caregiver burnout, what does that look like specifically for someone that's caring with a person? And is
Mm.
there such a thing of patient burnout? So I like to hear both. So one, what does it look like when a caregiver is burnt out? What signs? Because a caregiver could be listening to this and they're just like, oh, this is just, isn't this just normal life?
Yeah.
So what does that look like so they can spot it? And then is there such thing as patient burnout?
Yeah. Man, whew, that burnout thing is so real, Michael Clark. It is so real. And it comes in so many forms. It's just it mirrors like depression. It kind of like runs neck and neck. It's like they're in this race. And so what it looks like exhaustion. It looks like forgetfulness. It looks like the dropsies. You know, you go to Miss Dorsey is calling me back to back. That's what it is. Just
Oh, you know what?
yeah.
I want you to take that.
Okay.
You
Okay.
just jump
So
back in. Yeah.
all right. Hold on.